Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sandy Close, Director of American Community Media, formerly Ethnic Media Services. On behalf of ACOM and our co-host, the California Student Aid Commission, thank you for joining today's media briefing. The topic, Reaffirming California's Commitment to Immigrant, Refugee, and Undocumented Students. The federal free application for federal student aid, known as FAFSA, has experienced delays and data challenges this year, which cause confusion and anxiety for many families, especially immigrant and refugee communities who already face systemic barriers. That's why today's conversation is so important. The California DREAM Act application, known as CDAA, is more than an alternative. It's a lifeline that ensures all students, regardless of immigration status, can pursue higher education with dignity and support. We know that when trusted community voices and media amplify accurate, culturally relevant information, it leads to action. So today, we bring together leaders from the California Student Aid Commission, a student, a parent, and a college access organization to share what they're seeing on the ground and to reaffirm that California remains committed to equity in education. This is a story about inclusion, resilience, and the power of policy to uplift, not exclude, our next generation of leaders. Thank you for being part of this urgent and hopeful conversation. Now, let me introduce our speakers. We're honored to have you, and thank you so much for joining us. We begin with Dr. Daisy Gonzalez, Executive Director of the California Student Aid Commission. Dr. Gonzalez has been a tireless advocate for ensuring equitable access to financial aid for all students across California. Today, she will speak about CSAC's continued commitment to supporting immigrant, refugee, and mixed status families, and the role of the California DREAM Act application amidst ongoing FAFSA challenges. Dr. Gonzalez, you've joined us in the past. We welcome you back. Thank you, and please go ahead.
Thank you, Sandy. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you here. And I just want to say thank you for all the work that you do every day. To our colleagues who are here joining us, Christopher, Celeste, and the CSAC team, thank you for your work behind the scenes as well. We're here today to talk about students pursuing higher education and specifically how financial aid can make those dreams possible. But of course, we can't ignore the reality, what is actually happening on the ground for many of our students and families. And so first and foremost, I'm here to talk about how we are all living in unparalleled times. And many Californians, yes, the Californians that we are neighbors with, our families, the teachers, the coworkers, everyone here in California is a Californian. How some of them are living in unprecedented times where their data is being shared between federal agencies to attack them and target them. We have students and families who, in the name of federal immigration enforcement, are being attacked. And so the truth is that our communities are in turmoil, that they are facing inhumanity, whether it is personal or through a lived experience of their family members, their neighbors, their coworkers, their teachers, their nurses, and yes, service workers who were once classified as essential workers during a global pandemic. That is the reality in which we operate today when we think about higher education and when we seek to support our communities and our students. Every day I hear from our students and our partners are on the ground. Soon you will hear from some of them. The reality and the choices that our students are making. They are right now in survival mode. That is what they are doing. Many of them are thinking about not pursuing their higher education. The future seems very unlikely, and in particular, a future in this country. So I'm here to share the commitment of the California Student Aid Commission. We are the state agency responsible for administering more than $3 billion in financial aid. And I want to extend this message to all families, in particularly those that are being persecuted, those who are living through fear right now, that you are California. And from our eyes, you belong in California, and this state believes in you, and we want you and your children to succeed. So for all of those families, we know that you deserve a better future, and we are here for you. I am the proud daughter of immigrants. I'm also a first-generation college student. And so I know very closely the life-changing power of higher education. But I also know that top of mind for what is different from the reality that I live to the reality that we are living in today, the moment is very different. And the decision to pursue higher education is really about an action. Post-secondary education of tomorrow is an act of resistance and persistence for this generation. And so as we continue with this briefing, I want to share with you that our job at the California Student Aid Commission is to support every family. Right now in this state, we want our undocumented students, mixed status families, our refugees to apply for financial aid. And there is a safe pathway. That's the California DREAM Act application, CADA for short, CADAA. And it is an application that is California's application. That data is not shared with the federal government. It's very similar to 16 other states who also have their own financial aid application, and it is meant to serve the diverse populations within our state. The California DREAM Act application offers access to state aid for undocumented students who meet the non-resident tuition criteria, and most recently, it is an application that is used by mixed status families. That's an application where the student is a U.S. citizen and one or more of the contributors, parent or a spouse, does not have a Social Security number. It's very important that I also share with you that the California DREAM Act application is California's solution. It is data and information that is held in California, and we will do everything that we can to secure it, which is why I feel very comfortable sharing with you that we will do everything that we can to protect your data to the fullest extent of the law. That application and the data that students complete will only be used to determine state and institutional aid eligibility, and it is not shared with the federal government. So I want to end my remarks and really just say thank you to the colleagues who will be joining me, answer any questions that you may have, and just share that CADA, the California DREAM Act application, continues to be a beacon of hope for every Californian. And yes, that means our undocumented students, our refugees, our mixed status families, and every Californian who needs a safe pathway to apply for financial aid. So if you are here, we're really grateful that you're interested in this topic, particularly because we know that it's a lot harder to think about your future with everything going on in the world. I need you to know that the partners who are here from Unite LA, 10,000 Degrees, and many who joined us to do a press release last week, they will not back down. The California Student Aid Commission will not back down. We are mission-driven organizations with a very clear mission to serve and ensure that every California student has access to higher education and financial aid. Thank you, Sandy. Happy to answer any questions.
Hi, Dr. Gonzalez. A couple of questions on my private chat. And one question is, have you seen a decline in applications, particularly among students of with undocumented status, such as what we've seen in K through 12, with families not wanting to have their children go to school at a time they fear risking getting apprehended by ICE?
Yes, absolutely. It's one of the most common questions that we get, particularly through our call center. Even individuals who have completed an application still have concerns. We are seeing those numbers decrease. While California as a whole is seeing increases in applications, we see concerning numbers, especially for undocumented Californians, mixed status families still today. And with many refugees, individuals who have different visas still living in peril, that is the third category of student who right now we are seeing fewer applications in our state.
So one of the challenges for us who serve communities where there are significant numbers of undocumented students and other vulnerable populations is to really encourage people to continue pursuing higher education. And you referred to that as an act of resistance. Could you say more about what you mean?
Yes, thank you for the question. So for me, it's that information is level one of the work. And I think about the work that we need to do, not just in providing information, but removing barriers. And that is a form of resistance. So for example, the California Student Aid Commission made sure that as we were building the California DREAM Act application, we could streamline processes, connecting AB 540, which is a state policy in California that allows for in-state tuition, aligning that so that the process could be streamlined, better partnerships with institutions. Those are acts of resistance because we are making pathways and systems work for individuals that have been historically and nationally told that they do not belong in higher education. On the other side of the message, when I think about encouragement and information, I think about the students and their families, the ancestors who arrived in this country before we all did, who had to resist. And so now we are asking people to be courageous, to put themselves on the line. And that is an act of resistance, choosing to pursue your dreams, choosing to apply for education and financial aid is an act of resistance for many of these communities who would otherwise have no access and whose ancestors and families have had no access in this country.
I should know the answer to this, but I don't. And the great privilege of being a journalist is you can ask questions, even if maybe others might hesitate because they show how ignorant one is. But is the California DREAM Act application for students who are applying to community college, or is it only state university and and is it only the university system?
Got it. No, that's a beautiful question. That's the complexity of financial aid. Here in California, we have two applications. As you mentioned, the FAFSA, the federal application, and then the California DREAM Act application, California's application. Those applications are really directed towards your pathway. So we want undocumented students, mixed status families to know that they have options, that they would be completing a California DREAM Act application. A mixed status family can also complete a FAFSA. And particularly with prior years of challenges for those families, some families fill out both. And behind the scenes, we figure out the process. Those applications are the starting point to access any public higher education entity. So private, which are like your USC's, Stanford in the world, those are private colleges, University of California, California State University, and community colleges. They all have different deadlines. The importance for today's briefing is the student applies, they tell us where they intend to go, where they got accepted, and then we match their aid to their institution. And for us today, we have a very important September 2nd deadline here in the state of California. That's for students who want to go to a community college. That's the final deadline to be able to access aid if they plan on starting this fall.
And one other question. Before our conference began, you were saying you were keeping a close eye on negotiations around the California state budget. Are the funds for the California DREAM application in any way in danger of being cut at a time so many programs that support communities are worried about losing funds or already have been sort of blue pencil, but not yet confirmed?
From what I have seen, and I can tell you that I looked at numbers this morning, the governor has not signed a budget here in California, but I can tell you that there is a big commitment from the legislature, and soon the final budget will show that in California, financial aid continues to be a top priority. That also means that in this year's budget, California is not just funding the projection of how many students will apply, which is why we want undocumented students, refugees, mixed status families to apply, because we need to count them in and fund for them. But California is also preparing, not just in funding financial aid, but funding specific segments who serve these populations with additional support in those institutions, because we know that there are federal dollars potentially at risk. So hopefully the good news by the end of the week is that financial aid, higher education continues to be a priority in California. What I have seen in the budget so far confirms that.
Thank you. That is terrific. There are a number of other questions, but they may be answered by our next speaker. So please stay on the call because we'll come back to you with final questions. And if you have any observations you want to add as we go through our next two speakers, please put a little icon in your box so I can know and call on you, or just speak out. So our next speaker is Christopher Gonzalez, no relation to Dr. Daisy Gonzalez. And he is with he is with 10,000 Degrees, one of California's most respected college access organizations. 10,000 Degrees has helped thousands of underrepresented students reach and graduate from college. Christopher will share how the organization is working to ensure immigrant, refugee, and undocumented students feel supported and informed when applying for financial aid through the California DREAM Act application. Christopher, please take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Sandy. So I think just to start, for over 44 years now since our inception, 10,000 Degrees has really stood firm in our belief and behind California immigrant, refugee, undocumented, and mixed status students and families. It's really kind of been the DNA of our work and something that, we really pride ourselves on and really supporting this community of students. I think, specifically with the California DREAM Act, we existed before, that actually kind of began and really saw the kind of metamorphosis as it was put into implementation, with our communities and students, even leading up to today. And so I say that in just the preface of, we have seen thousands of students kind of have these opportunity doors open to them thanks to this legislation. And really seeing the cyclical impact it's had on them and their families, and frankly, for the betterment in our communities. So I think, for us and 10,000 Degrees, our, lane has really been focused on, first and foremost, supporting low-income students to and through college, but specifically with financial aid, specifically just given all of the barriers that have been noted today and the extra hoops that they have to go through to really have that opportunity. So I think for us, we're very, very proud and grateful to partner with the California Student Aid Commission, really focused on financial aid completion for marginalized communities. And so how that typically plays out for 10,000 Degrees, we essentially have an amazing team of program staff. They're called 10,000 Degrees Fellows, and they are recent college graduates of 10,000 Degrees who are more often than not first generation themselves. and they come back to work for us full time to really work in our schools, off-site, during after-school events, really focused on financial aid. And so, our kind of model is a little bit place-based, but I think too, just trying to meet the students where they are and in a way that resonates with them. And so we're not only helping them, fill out applications and check all the boxes, but I think we're making sure that they understand about all the opportunities on the table, in a way that's, said in their language that is culturally relevant, and that's delivered by staff, our fellows, who are near peer, role models for them, who, as we've kind of spoken a little bit today, kind of have that really powerful narrative to show them that this is possible because they did it. So I think when all is said and done, and all the challenges that are in front of us and misinformation, that's kind of been the uplifting piece for us in our secret sauce is, our fellows combined with financial aid workshops and frankly, powerful partnerships like the California Student Aid Commission, where, we're able to deliver, programming on site and really support one-to-one, but more broadly, supporting each other through advocacy efforts to really move the needle, around really important legislation like this. So I'll pause there, but that's a little bit about us.
Is there, thank you, Mr. Gonzalez, is there a particular application form? There's so much useful information on the chat, but a way that our media can get in touch with you directly if they want to include a referral in their stories to 10,000 students.
Yes, absolutely. We have that. And I'll ping actually Elena if you want to drop our website in the chat, but her contact information, she'd be the best person to follow up for that.
That would be great. And I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's 10,000 degrees.
Yes.
Tell us where 10,000 degrees is based.
Yeah, so 10,000 degrees, we are actually in 8 Bay Area counties out here in Northern California, as well as Utah. So we kind of have these satellite locations all throughout. So we're currently right now in Marin County, Sonoma County, Lake County, Napa, Contra Costa, San Francisco, San Mateo, and Santa Clara County as well.
And because all of us as journalists know that personal stories are what stick in the mind, often months and even years after a briefing, do you have a story of a particular student who recently 10,000 degrees was able to encourage and help apply for the California DREAM Act application?
Yes, and we have so many. I think, for us, specifically, if you're looking for a detailed story, are you asking for names and things like that, Sandy?
No, you don't need the name, just
Oh, great.
your sense of the person's story.
Yeah, of course. So we've had a student, for example, in Sonoma County recently who, we've worked with for quite some time, I think a little bit over 2 years. And I think similarly to the students we're talking about here had, a lot of just instability challenges, in their own home life, but I think specifically around, being from a mixed status family. And so a lot of the misinformation that's been getting out there, there's been, just a lot of work with them and their families one-to-one to make sure that they know about their options. But I think when you think about the financial piece of the pie, students can have really fantastic grades, and sometimes it doesn't seem like it's achievable if the finances aren't there. So specifically, there was a lot of hesitation, especially this last year, over data privacy for FAFSA. I think specifically in working with the California Student Aid Commission, we were able to really kind of come together with some clear facts to kind of do some fact checking with our students, and this student in particular, and really work through with that family over multiple meetings in different ways, that it is safe to really apply through the California DREAM Act application. Essentially as either a loophole to get through this moment we're in, but again, because we partnered so closely with CSAC, We trust and know that this is California led and led by, the community that's here today and Dr. Daisy Gonzalez, who we trust. So it was one of the first times I think we were able to really communicate that in a way that resonated there and just a data privacy piece. And so, they actually applied, we're working through their financial aid packages right now for colleges, and those kind of results are coming in. And so they're really excited, still nervous, but I think, again, that's where the network and the power of connecting really comes in. So I'd share that's a brief one, but definitely, not a stranger to other folks in their situations.
Thank you. We have a important question from Alicia Wong, which, Alicia, can you ask your question? Alicia with the journal.
Hi, thank you, Sandy. So my question is, what's your advice, either of the speakers, for the undocumented and mixed status applying federal financial aid program in current circumstances during the preview immigration rates? So probably some of the applicants are afraid of their data will be diverged to the federal immigration enforcement. So what's your advice?
And you're specifically asking about FAFSA as opposed to the California DREAM Act application.
Yes.
Yes, good question. So, Christopher, do you want to take that on, and then I'll ask Dr. Gonzalez?
Yeah, sure. So I think our approach at 10,000 Degrees is really making sure, again, that students and families have all the information that they need to make educated decisions for themselves. So I think our approach has always been, giving them the tools and the resources they need to make that decision and have the agency there. And so I say that especially in this moment, we don't want people to feel pressured or rushed to make this decision that could have implications for their life. And so I think, when we have conversations with students, we're absolutely highlighting the pros, in the value of a college education. We're talking through success stories and connecting them with our alumni so they have real people outside of the misinformation and news that they're getting to show that this is possible for you. But I think similarly, it really is looking at your situation, weighing those pros and cons and making the best decision for you. I think what we have been advising students, again, with the California DREAM Act application, essentially being that kind of safe space for them to really apply for state financial aid right now. And again, given the advice from Dr. Gonzalez, the hard work of the team here at CSAC, for us to really trust, that is secure and happening. And so, it really is thinking about what their motivations are. But I always say go at the speed of trust. And I think for us as an organization, we're not expecting students to fill out the application overnight. We're giving them multiple chances to think it through. We're saying it in a variety of different ways. And ultimately, whatever they decide, we will support them with no matter what. So I would say, again, go at the speed of trust. It is a family decision. And so that's something we've stayed firm with, and making sure that they're including their family members, that we're checking in with them to make sure that they're aware of what's going on and that their voices are heard. And there's a lot of beauty that comes in that, but a lot of real tough conversations. But I think our advice, again, is there's free financial aid available for you, and there's a community of supporters that are here. And so it's hard sometimes when we get lost in the news and the only negative, when the reality is there are also stories and people who are still persisting and making it and doing very well for themselves. And so our job is to make sure we find the balance, but make sure that those are uplifted as well.
Thank you. Dr. Gonzalez, do you have any thoughts on this question? And I can see how people would be very concerned if they don't apply for FAFSA because of fear. Have they shot themselves in the foot? Have they been too cautious?
Thank you, Sandy, and really well said, Christopher. We put some information and content in the chat, but let me just add a little bit of the proactive approach that we've taken at the California Student Aid Commission. For many undocumented Californians, these are students who are undocumented, the California Dream Act application is their only option. So that concern is a lived reality, right? That's about trust and being able to provide information in real time. For mixed status families, it's a lot more complex. And for that one, Alicia, I think you hit it right on the mark, right? What do we do when there is a student who is a US citizen and a family member or a contributor in that application could be at risk of being deported? And they're seeing everything in the news and in their communities. Those are the choices that Christopher was sharing, where you provide the student information. Our best advice is you want to weigh all of your options. The reality is many of these families, if this is a student who is continuing their education, that data already lives with the federal government. And so that is a concern for the family, but a very real reality. For brand new students who have never completed an application, their options are a little bit harder and they really think about their families. And so we give them all of the options. And Sandy, to your earlier question, I think it's really a complex system that is evolving day to day. And so at CSAC, we also do the proactive approach that if a student chooses to fill out a CADA because they're brand new, they've never completed it, it doesn't mean that they can never go back and complete a federal application. They're waiting for the right moment in time. And we have had situations where a family or a student complete both. And behind the scenes, we help them make that transition. Why? Because we want to make sure that they can succeed in their education, but we go at the speed of trust and also of the reality that they are living.
Thank you. You know, one of the media who joined us is Juan Esparza. Juan, I'm sorry to call you out, but with Vida and El Valle and the Fresno Bee, I've known for years that you've attended high school graduations and you've written columns about them. And that always impressed me. I'm just wondering if there's anything you want to ask or share with us about the current graduates and as they finish high school, their worries, both financially and because of the immigration crackdown, about going to college and applying for financial aid.
I think, hi, Sandy, great to see you. I think the biggest fear is from students themselves, some of them from mixed status families, about the immigration rates. They have not happened in a great scale here in the Fresno area, but there's still that fear that they're going to be out here. For example, a Fresno City Council member mentioned that a swap meet was going to be visited by ICE agents on on Saturday a week ago. And no one, I mean, obviously ICE did not show up. Very few vendors showed up. Customers stayed away. So there's that fear. Getting back to your question about students, there are various programs that help students prepare for college, like the TRIO programs. I wrote a column about that and how the administrators feel like it's a worthy program. It gets low-income students of any race to prepare for college, make sure they have the A to G requirements and the application process and so on. As you know, or you may not know, that Fresno State hosts the largest Latino graduation ceremony in the country, and the organizer was afraid to publicize this year's ceremony for fear that he would draw the wrath of Trump and his administration. This event relies entirely on non-university funds. The cost is about $30,000 to rent the facility and provide security and set up the arena for the event. So we're starting to see where the Trump administration is slowly but surely chipping away at education. It may be a little bit too early to figure out if students are still hesitant to apply for college because of these fears. But it'll be in the upcoming months when the school year begins again. I know that there's been reports about students staying away from high school because of fear over ICE rates. I think EdSource put a story together on that. So that'll be interesting to follow.
Right. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. Let's go now to our speaker who is herself a student and who has navigated the financial aid process as an immigrant and or undocumented learner. And this is, we're very happy to have Selene Mar join us and tell us a little about herself and the importance for her of relying on the California Dream Act application and how it changed her life. Celeste. Sorry, I called you Selene. I meant to call you Celeste. Celeste Mar. Welcome.
Thank you, no worries. Yes, so hi everybody. Like mentioned, my name is Celeste. I am a first generation student. I do come from immigrant parents, and so I do do a lot of work in the field regarding supporting other students. I do want to kind of mention that I'm a student who does fill out the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. However, I have in my time working in education have supported many students with the California Dream Act, and I have seen how that application has supported our students for them to reach their higher education goals. So a little bit about my journey is just that like I mentioned, I'm a first generation student. I remember being in high school, filling out even financial aid, just the free application for federal student aid is already a tricky application for a student like myself, because again, it's just, how can I fill out this application? What's going to happen to my parent information? And even though for me it was years ago, I still see that prevalent today in our students and that concern that they have when it comes to filling out either the California Dream Act or the free application for federal student aid. I think during my undergraduate experience, I was still filling out the financial aid application, and yes, there was still that fear. And so as I'm now older and in my graduate studies, I'm fortunate enough to no longer have to need that contributor portion for me. So for me, it's like that safety net where I'm like, well, at least I don't have to include my parent information. Because of course, with everything going on, especially specifically right now in Los Angeles with the ICE rates happening, it's very heartbreaking and very inhumane. And I see that our students, their families are being targeted simply by the way they look. They've even had to go to the grocery store for their parents. They've had to be that front person to support their families in these hard times. And so all that to say that when navigating my higher education goals, it's already a difficult process as it is for first generation, like our students that we support. And so as a current graduate in the counseling program at Cal State Long Beach, I get to support students like me who have similar backgrounds, who have similar upbringings, and who have even the same fears as me. I've had situations where students have had that conversation with me where they say, Celeste, what application do I fill out? I'm afraid, I don't know which one, right? And so it's again having to have those conversations and speaking with their families and being like, these are your options, and we're gonna lay them out for you and give you that information that you need. I want them to feel supported, and I want them to have all the tools and resources that they can need in order for them to take that next step in their future. I think with everything going on with the ICE rates and the attacks towards our students and their families, students will most likely be hesitant to fill out FAFSA or the California Dream Act. And although CATA is still a reliable application, that fear will still remain there. And so even though it's unpredictable, especially during this political climate. Like our students, are still being hesitant. They believe that like by not filling out these applications, then that means that they get to protect their families in some way. I think that we as a community need to continue to present to the needs of our students and our families. And those students who come from mixed status households need to especially be supported and assured of their safety. We need to continue to make sure that they are being given the accurate information and timely updates, just like how we do, whether it's in the field or through CSAC, the California Student Aid Commission, how they are able to support our students. This is what I hope to also do in my current role at Unite LA is I just want to make sure to lead the Los Angeles regional efforts. I look forward to learning more and working more with students here as an intern. I do want to, though, acknowledge that the state of California has historically moved in the right direction when it comes to supporting our undocumented individuals. For example, like passing the legislation like AB 540 and the establishment of the California Dream Act. I have seen how that application has made it possible for our students that are undocumented to reach their higher education goals. And however, even though it's still like critical to continue the fight for the access of higher education. It's especially more critical for our undocumented communities. We want to ensure that they feel safe and supported in order for them to reach their goals in the future.
Thank you very much for that very eloquent description. Could you tell us a little about your own future plans and the extent? I didn't quite understand. Are you still able to apply for financial aid? And if so, you spoke about students wanting to protect their parents and therefore avoid applying for aid. But as Dr. Gonzalez said, many students already that information. It's a very difficult thing to have to work out as a young person. Tell us a little about your own decisions on that score and what makes you get up in the morning with a sense of your own future and the importance of higher education for it.
Yes, so my future goals is to become a school counselor. So like I mentioned, I really want to support students that have similar backgrounds as me. I grew up in a low-income community. My neighbors were immigrants, my family are immigrants. And so I see that a lot in the schools that I've been able to support. So therefore, like I want to become that support that students can look to in order for them to realize that higher education is, possible for them. And I know I've mentioned earlier how there are students that are hesitant to fill out the applications. I think from my personal experience, it's that fear of my parents are undocumented, so therefore, how can I trust that this information is not going to be used against me? And how Christopher Gonzalez earlier mentioned, right? It's about supporting the student, supporting the families, and laying out their options for them. And then together we can make a decision on how they want to move forward. I can give an example of how I have supported a student this past financial aid deadline, where the student did not want to apply to the free application for federal student aid because of that fear. But because we also mentioned like that the California Dream Act was also was a safe option for them, they decided to do the California Dream Act in order for them to qualify for institutional aid and state aid. So we still were able to tell that student, these are your options. This is what this application will give you, and this is what this other application will give you. And with that, the student and their family was able to make that informed decision on how they wanted to move forward with that application.
That's really helpful. I'd like to go back to all our speakers, and this is partly for us as journalists. What stories can we tell? What information can we provide that will be that kind of motivating, inspiring reporting that makes people realize, yes, it is worth the risk, whatever that risk may be. We are going to apply for aid because we really do want to pursue higher education. In conversations you have had, is there any one sort of story or encouraging note, perhaps using your own personal history, that you think has really sort of been a very influential factor for the student you're talking with? And I'd start with Christopher Gonzalez. Is there a particular, there's no formula because everything depends on the person
Totally.
and who you're talking to, but at moments, yes, I said the right thing. What
Yeah.
was it? You can't bottle it, but share a little and give us your thoughts of what we could do that will help inspire students to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind, and especially reigns true right now, is again really highlighting student success stories. I think, there's so much negativity going on in the news and in the world right now, and I think similarly a lot of misinformation. And so when we're able to get a little bit local with students on mentioning those people that maybe they knew in high school or family members that we've connected them to that have gone through the process and done very well and come back to speak to students, that's the stuff that they're picking up on and really believing and kind of being that motivational touch point for them. And so for us, we're really trying to explore, again, it's not only about checking that box and doing the application. There's that motivation piece and inspiring piece that we have to get really creative on now through connecting them with people who've been through this. And so I think just, in terms of media and the power of amplifying stories, I think, equally, I'd love to see more of how undocumented people are crushing it and how they're doing so well and how they benefit our communities and are worth being here. And so I think when our students see that, it makes them want to apply for college. And so I think that's one piece for me there. And then I think just the other piece is, I started as a college advisor for 10,000 Degrees 11 years ago. And I've worked with hundreds of students from a variety of backgrounds. I'm very privileged to be able to have and walk that journey with them. And, again, when you're able to see the cycle of change and market that, there's nothing like it. And so, for example, I've had previous students of mine who I've now seen through the entire process, help them get to college, we help them secure that career, and now they're working for 10,000 Degrees again in a different capacity. And so we're able to connect them, tell that narrative and story. But when you're able to see that it not only impacts one student, but it impacts their siblings, and it's really a cyclical change, that's extra impactful because it's not just about the student. You're lifting your family out of generational poverty. And there's a lot of power in that. And so we always make sure to mention that and highlight that to our students. And then the last thing is, our students really appreciate authenticity and being real. They know when you're lying. And so I know when we are talking about, the pros and cons and the issues, and we can dance around things, but they don't have time for that, especially right now. Time is a luxury. And so when we think about when we are putting things in front of them, we need to make sure it's very intentional, that it's catered to them, that it's going to grab their attention, and that it's going to be meaningful for them. so that they get the message. So those would be mine.
Great. Dr. Daisy Gonzalez, what strikes you as something maybe you said or something you shared that in some ways more impactful than the analysis and the data?
I love Christopher's response, right? It's that return on investment. You don't know what you don't know. On the other side of that, and the conversations I've had, certainly with a lot of parents, it's the way that we say it. So the language in which we're communicating with. It's the reason why CSAC, the California Student Aid Commission, has made really big efforts this year to translate into multiple languages. So you see all of our websites and our documents and information be out in English, Spanish, Arabic, Mandarin, Korean, Armenian, Tagalog, many more languages that we would like to expand it to. And the reason for that is because you have a really vulnerable population, students who are hungry, who want to achieve that American dream, and then you have their families who don't know how to navigate this system. They believe in their children, they believe in the future, they see the world around them, and so we have to be able to communicate to them in different languages. So I've had great success when I say to students, particularly Spanish speakers, that information is available in Spanish. Let's talk about this. Let me share that information and walk you through it. Yes, it's different from other countries, but once I show you this system and how it works, your job is to go and teach the next family. And I share that because that's what made a difference in my life. I had a teacher show me the ropes and show me the way. And then her responsibility that she passed on to me was, once I help you do this, you have to go and help all of the other students in our class to complete that application. So it's how we say it, it's who we bring along, and what we impress on others to kind of carry it forward, which is what I love about Celeste's story and how she's already giving back to California students.
Celeste, thank you so much, Dr. Gonzalez. Celeste, your thoughts at this point. Did you have to convince your parents that you were on a path that was going to work for you, or did they encourage you, or was it mutual? And what do you tell your friends who haven't gone to higher education? Do you reach out to them, and what do you tell them?
Yeah, so with my parents always pushed for higher education. They were always like, you got to get through school, you got to go do amazing things. And so it's always been that push of, we want you to go to school, we want you to succeed. And so during my high school journey, when I was applying for my bachelor's degree, they were very, very supportive. And like I mentioned, even though it was scary navigating, and they also had no idea how to navigate everything that was happening, they were really supportive, and they were willing to learn how they can get me to the finish line. For my friends that have not gone to higher education, I think, yes, I'd still have contact with those folks, and I still to this day support them in whatever way that they can, especially when they are considering going back to school. If they're the kind of person that's like, hey, you know what, I'm kind of considering starting at a community college, like, what would you give me any advice on? Of course, I'm going to present their options because it's knowledge that I already know and I love to help them. So I obviously tell them, like, look, there's these programs happening, there's these applications that are here for you. I can definitely sit down with you. And so it's that drive. Like, if they want to do it, I will be there for them to help them get there.
That's terrific. So I want to just call attention to some very helpful material that Alina Erlin from 10,000 Degrees and a colleague of Dr. Gonzalez at CSAC, Sarah Beth Brooks, have entered into the chat. They're really useful, and we will be sure to send them out with a recording of today's call and bios of our speakers. But I want to thank those of you who've entered supportive information in the chat and call our colleagues' attention to it. In the last few minutes, I would like to ask each of you, and this is always hard, journalists spend much of our time writing, but in the end, it's the stories we have a headline in our heads that just pours out. Yes, this is exactly the headline I want for this story. Tell us what you think an important headline would be for us to use in reporting today's briefing. And it does put you rather on the spot. It is difficult. We think headlines, that's a breeze, but actually it's very challenging. So let me start with Dr. Gonzalez. What is your preferred, what headline would make you feel good to see in our media for today's briefing?
Definitely uplifting stories, but it makes me think about a question because this work is so complex. So maybe something along the lines of just California dreaming is higher education a lifeline for vulnerable communities? And then being able to answer the question. Yeah. That's
great. And here is a lifeline. It is a very good metaphor for the work of your agency, CSAC. Mr. Gonzalez, a headline to help us as we conclude today's briefing.
I feel like I want to vote for Dr. Daisy Gonzalez's, but the like one that comes to mind, it's not fully formed, is just something around when opportunity meets ambition, something California, and maybe again going off of supporting undocumented students and their success stories. But yeah, that's what comes to mind for me.
That's it's a very California message also, that I love the idea of keep dreaming, don't give up the dream. That's very helpful. See, people think ideas come to us when we're alone in a room. Actually, they tend to come in conversation and in proximity. So we're using you for these purposes. Finally, Celeste, Mar, if you were doing a paper or writing for your campus newspaper, what would your headline be for today's briefing?
Lengthy one, or the can't bring one to my mind, but I feel like it should have commitment in there.
No, but you channeled the title we gave for today's briefing, which is Reaffirming California's Commitment to Immigrant, Refugee, and Undocumented Students. I want to really thank each of you, not just for joining us for today's briefing, but for helping us get a closer feeling for how we can encourage people in our audiences to consider higher education, to not give up, to believe that there is support in not only in the form of the California Dream Act application, but also groups like 10,000 Degrees. So, and the organization United LA, is that the one, Celeste, you work for? Unite LA. So this has been very informative, and I've been so happy that we didn't have to rush through everyone's presentation. Sometimes you feel at the end of a briefing that you never gave people enough time. And today you were very generous with your time and your lived experience and your expertise. Thank you to all for joining, and this conference is now closed.